All right, welcome to Ranting and Raving. God, we are just about a week away from real football and real things to talk about and not having to make stuff up. But before we get into that, last video was about the optimist view of things. What if everything goes right for the Saints? And the prediction was basically they could win like reasonably, could win like 10 games. Now the question is, what if everything doesn't go right? I'm not even saying, what if everything goes horribly wrong? I'm just saying, what if everything doesn't go right? The offensive line isn't really, really good. They don't have great health. They don't get tons of contributions from young guys. Kellen isn't like a really, really good coach right off the bat. Quarterback, whether it's Shuck or whether it's Rattler, isn't basically an upgrade from last year. And if you believe like, oh, Derek Carr was really, I'm sorry, he wasn't. Like Rattler played three different halves that were better than as good or better than any half that Carr played under completely different adverse circumstances. And that's not saying Rattler was incredible. It was like Carr wasn't very good. When you didn't have Taysom in a dominant run game, he was meh. We all saw that Giants game. We were not good at all. So that's the scenario we're talking about today, which is much less fun. And I'm also not going to go into it as in depth because while I think it's probably the likelier outcome, it's not fun to talk about. So we're not going to dive super deep into it because it doesn't take a lot of analysis to go, well, things didn't work out. Um, but that is kind of the scenario. Like I said, I think it's more likely. It's completely probable. It's not wild fantasy the Saints to win 10 games, but a lot of things have to go right. I think we can kind of just quickly go for the different items like quarterback. Rattler, whether you like it or not, Rattler has shown potential, and whether you like it or not, Shuck has potential. He has a lot of upside. He's got tremendous arm talent. He's a good athlete. The now he might be mature, but he's not experienced. Like that's actually part of the problem. Shuck isn't experienced. Yeah, he might be a 26-year-old rookie, but he's not experienced. He might have been in college for 7 years. He's not experienced. He's got like a basically barely a season and a half of football. He's less experienced than Rattler by a lot, and that's without counting the NFL tape. Does that mean it's not possible for him to have had it all click last year and have an incredible camp and win the starting job and be solid? No, of course, it's not impossible. But is it possible or even likely that he's super up and down? And anytime he's pressured, just like when he was in college, his brain turns into jello, just like the guy he's following up after. And we're not good. Yeah, that's possible. Is it possible that for all his upside and the flashes, Rattler never puts it all together and he's in the operator archetype, but you still have to make plays and you have to be consistent and you have to be reliable. And is it possible that like he is a boom and bust guy and it's like, well, one great half and then he's terrible the next half and can't move the ball? That's also possible. If quarterback doesn't improve, you need a really, really good defense, which we're not going to have, and you need a great run game, which we might have. There's your first domino. That leads right into the second one, offensive line, which is the key to the entire offense. They spent their number one over pick on it. They are moving Penning over to left guard, which I think is actually a good move. He actually seems excited about it, which does matter. Like feeling like you have a place and there's a vision for you absolutely matters, especially considering what he's dealt with and also what he's got to overcome, just as far as like technique and stuff. Um, but let's say Penning is average, like he's 80% of peak, like peak peak. Let's say Banks is pretty good, Fuag is pretty good. Let's say McCoy stays healthy. If Ruiz is a disaster like he usually is, you're probably not going to get as much push in the run game as you're hoping to. and you're going to really struggle in pass protection. And if Shuck's the quarterback, he really struggles with pressure, and interior pressure is the worst pressure. Like right there, that could be your season. In particular, because they're not going to have a good defense. Now, there's a possibility of them getting to around average defense. If they're just disciplined and play really hard, they can get there. But like they are supremely sub talented on defense at the linebacker position, at the cornerback position, and along the defensive line. They have 485 beefy defensive tackles, but none of those guys are pass rushers. And Brzee is okay, but like he's got some issues, and he's got some production, but like he's kind of towing that line between like could be something and could be another bust. And he's kind of got to put it all together this year. So, like, is the defense going to be really good? Probably not. Again, if it all goes right, you get to average, but if it doesn't, like, just doesn't go all right, everything works out the way you need it to. The defense is probably going to be pretty bad. You've got the corpse of Cam, the corpse of Demario, the corpse of Honey Badger. You don't have a true number one corner, and like you're going to have problems. And then if you have an offense that can't score consistently and easily, like you're going to get down, and that puts more pressure on the defense, which exacerbates issues and creates more problems and absolutely can snowball. So, yeah, is it plausible and even probable that the defense is going to kind of be ass? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Now, again, it could totally work out. They could get to average, and it would certainly have a positive effect on the team. But today's video, unfortunately, is well, what if it doesn't all go right? And then the last thing here is that I'm going to talk about is Kellen Moore. Kellen was a very good offensive coordinator last year in Philadelphia. It was also a loaded roster. Like the weakest position on that offense is quarterback, and they have a pretty damn good quarterback. He was phenomenal in the Super Bowl. He's pretty damn good. He's not elite. He's not incredible. He's not a fantastic quarterback. He was meh for most of the year, but you got a transcendent running back, a dominant offensive line, really, really good receivers, good tight ends. Like, yeah, it's like a fully stocked kitchen. And now you're kind of walking into, hey, man, we got leftovers. We got you know, a few shakes of paprika in the spice cabinet and nothing else. Like, make it work. We're about to find out just how good Kellen Moore is. And on top of that, he has to show he can be a leader of men. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. Like, you don't have to be a Dan Campbell, you don't have to be a Sean Payton. Like, there's a ton of different personality types. Like, the reality is, you're coaching players. If you have their respect and you communicate clearly and you hold them to a standard, you can lead. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about that. You do not have to be an alpha, which if you use that word, you're probably dumb. Um, unless you do math, like that, then it's fine. But outside of that, or I guess if you pledge, but again, whatever. Um, if he's not really good as a coach, I'm not saying he can't be better next year and build on and become a better coach. I'm talking about for this season. If he's not really good right out of the gate, it's going to be a problem because it's not a very good roster, and they had a meat and potatoes draft. The only like really impactful guy you can project in any way out of this draft is Banks. And that's a foundational piece. There's nothing wrong with foundational pieces. Like infrastructure is vitally important in basically everything that you do, regardless of line of work or level you're talking about. Offensive line is super important, but it's got to hit and it's got to be dominant. Otherwise, like you did not shift your margins at all. Then you've got an athletic linebacker who, at least in college, like wasn't particularly good in coverage and lacks some agility elements that are concerning at the pro level. But we'll see what he becomes. He certainly plays his ass off. You've got a pretty athletic, strong safety. You don't have a free safety on the roster currently. No one with range. You don't have a number one corner. Like unless Kool Aid massively from year one, which again could happen, but probably not. Like there's issues here, and like that's your draft. You didn't get any juice. You didn't get any of those tight ends. You didn't improve the receiver room. We don't have anybody over 6 feet tall. That's worth a damn. Like, could Peoples Jones be good? Sure, in theory, and if he does, awesome. Great for him, and super happy for him, and that would be dope. But are we gonna predict that? No, he's more likely to be Maquan without the freaking blocking. Like, that's the reality. So if Kellen Moore isn't a great coach right out the gate, margins are down. Like I said, it's not a fun video. Like I'm not hoping for this, but it like all of these things could happen. These are completely reasonable. It's not a particularly good roster. You don't have like there's nothing where like this guy's the man at quarterback. Like we got two unknowns and they're both unknowns for different reasons. Like if you could mesh all their attributes together, minus the age. Like if they were like a 23-year-old with all their attributes, like you'd have a blue chip top 5 pick quarterback. We don't have that guy. Doesn't mean you can't win with it. Doesn't mean you can't, develop it. Doesn't mean it can't execute. But like you don't have that guy, so it's difficult to predict. So like all that said, what's the record going to look like? If everything doesn't work out, here's what I think's going to happen. I think you're going to lose to Arizona. I think you're going to lose to San Francisco. I think you're going to lose to the Seahawks. I think the Bills are going to beat the brakes off the Saints. I think you're going to lose to the Jets. I still think they probably beat New England. I don't think the Patriots are going to be good this year. They'll have more talent and they'll be better. But like Pats at home, I think that's a very winnable game, and especially like week 6, I think some things will come into motion. I think they probably be that. I think Chicago beats the brakes off them. I think Tampa Bay beats the brakes off them. I think the Rams are going to do filthy, disgusting things to the Saints, and in particular our defense. I think Carolina should beat them. Like Carolina actually had a really good offseason, and Carolina and the Saints, the second half of last year, trended in very different directions. So, like, if everything doesn't go right for the Saints, that's probably an L at Carolina. If everything goes right, like we talked about last week, like 10 wins is totally possible. But if you don't hit on all that stuff, it's a big mountain to climb. There's a reason why everybody's ranking the Saints as like the 31st, 32nd team in the league. Good roster. Thanks, Mickey. You king suck at your job. Oh, this grosses me out. Probably going to lose to the Falcons. Probably going to lose to Miami, even though like I don't think Miami's great. I think that offense is going to run all up and down on the Saints. Going to lose to the Bucks again. I think you beat Carolina at home. I think you could beat the Giants at home. I think Cam is going to be really, really, really good as a rookie. I think Tennessee low key actually had a good offseason. And I think by week 17, like it could be a shootout, but I think they probably beat the Saints. And it's gross, but I think you lose to the Falcons again because if everything doesn't work out, if the offensive, and in particular, the offensive line is one of those items, Atlanta quadrupled down on pass rushers. And if Shuck's the starting quarterback and he's not good under pressure at all, if they're getting to him, like you're going to turn the ball over. You're going to do dumb stuff. You're going to get behind the 8 ball, and our defense is probably going to be a bucket of butt. And there you go. Like, that is a 3-win team. Now, is that the worst thing in the world? Not necessarily. This is the one optimistic point of this video. And I'm partially just because I want to end on a good note because this is not fun to talk about going freaking 3-14. Um, there's a version of going 3-14 that's actually a huge win for the Saints. There's actually two versions. So the first one is the defense looks better than expected. The offensive line works out. Kellen looks good, but both quarterbacks suck. And you lose blowouts against good teams, but you lose a lot of close games. And you have a number of young guys that look good. Kendre Miller puts it together and looks good. And like maybe you don't need to cut him or draft his replacement immediately. Olave has a great season. Shows that he's worth keeping around fully healthy or mostly fully healthy. 15 plus games, whatever that looks like. Like You can stack some of those things to build on. If you win 3 games, you're going into what is likely going to be an incredible quarterback draft class. And you're damn near going to have the ability to pick your guy. And if you're losing those games, but you're losing them in the way you want to, like that can be a good thing. Now, here's the other version. Whether it's Rattler or Shuck, I've said before, I think Rattler's more likely for a number of circumstances, none of it having to do with Shuck not being capable of being good, but just circumstances, team construction, experience, etc. Regardless of which one it is. Let's say the quarterback plays pretty good, 3,200 to 3,500 yards, 26 ish touchdowns, not a million interceptions, maybe 11 to 14 interceptions, like a good season, something to build on for a really young guy. But the defense is just no resistance. Maybe not 2012 bad, but like just taking off the panties and accepting whatever you want to give them. Bad. Okay. Well, in that circumstance, maybe you did hit on your quarterback. Like like how you hit those numbers matters, but like the quarterback looks really good and you're like, I think we actually have something. You know, you go into next year's draft and you got a few options. Like you can move down and just get an absolute haul of picks from a team that's desperate for a quarterback if you really think you found your guy and they showed you enough to believe that. You can take a pass rusher, which the Saints have none of. It would be a huge help for the defense. Like you have options. And then again, you have that culture that you're building on. The playing hard, the elevating, the young guys taking over, that transition. Like you can go into your two under Kellen Moore and really have some genuine optimism and get some eating juice in the draft, next year. Like there's a version of going 3-14 where that is the reality. Like I said, there's a couple of versions where it's you didn't win any games, but you were competitive in games and you had things to build on. There's the one I don't really want to talk about, which is just like another bad draft, no difference makers. O line doesn't work out. None of the quarterbacks work out. Kellen's a dud as a coach. And the only positive thing there is they probably finally fire Mickey Loomis, who's just not a good GM. Period. Actually, he's quite awful. But I'm not convinced that's the most likely option, frankly. Like, I think some of these things are going to work out. I'm actually reasonably confident in the O line. I'm reasonably confident in Kellen Moore. Personally, I think that some of the Kellen Moore is not an alpha stuff is a little bit overblown. Again, there's a bunch of different personality types that work. Kellen Moore was a prolific quarterback in college. That matters. Like, just as far as the ability to lead a locker room and lead guys, won a crap ton of games, was an underdog, like, he's a pretty fiery guy on the field. I wouldn't be surprised to find out in meeting rooms when he needs to take charge, he's a lot less aw shucks than you think he is, especially on the press conferences. Coach Teeths, take a bite out of your ass. So I'm reasonably confident about him. That's actually something I'm not hugely worried about. I think Mickey thinks Kellen's a bitch. And Kellen's definitely a collaborator. He's got a collaborator personality type. That doesn't mean you're a bitch. I think Mickey made some choices this offseason based largely on the premise and the idea that he thinks Kellen's a bitch. The only bitch in that room is Mickey Lowe's. He's an incompetent bitch, which is worse. I'm reasonably confident in the O line. Um, I'm reasonably confident in Olave of really having a big bounce back year. There's a possibility that Chase Young puts some things together and you know does some things and brings some value. There's like I said, there's things that are reasonable to be confident about, but if everything doesn't go right, 3-14 or worse is on the table, and we just got to accept that. But like I said, like there's a version of that where we're going into next year like, yeah, we had an awful year, but we're about to have a great draft. We got a great draft pick. We got some things to build on. We got momentum, and it's kind of the Lions path of, we were competitive but losing a ton, which means we get a great draft pick and then we get to keep building on that. That's not out of the ballpark at all. So let's wait and see what happens. So that's my prediction if everything doesn't go well. I would love, 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 love things to work out the way that the first video did, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it goes more this way. We'll start finding out which way it's going to go pretty soon. Training camp's right around the corner. Who dat, to that, all that. Y'all have a good one. More from Misa.